it is still a subdued recovery. It is going to take time to recover from this devastating year of 2020.
Hello and welcome to Expert Answers. I'm Paul Blake. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to the most significant economic downturn since the Second World War. Now, as vaccines begin to roll out, the global economy could be turning a corner towards recovery. So what do the next few months hold for economic growth? I put that and other questions to the World Bank's Acting Vice President for Equitable Growth and Financial Institutions, Ayhan Koze. So Ayhan, to start things off, give us your headline figure, your projection for the global economy in 2021, and then from there we can go and break things down and look at it from different angles.
So the good news, Paul, growth is coming back in 2021. At the global level, we are expecting growth to be around 4%. If you look at advanced economies, they are going to deliver growth around 3.3%. And if you look at emerging developing economies, we are expecting growth to be around actually 5%. We just need to think about that big 5% number in the case of emerging developing economies because China plays an important role and China is doing quite well. And we expect China to deliver high growth number in 2021. If you take out China, that number is going to be 3.4%. Not so good news is that it is still a subdued recovery. It is going to take time to recover from this devastating year of 2020.
And I mentioned one of the things that's going to be the key to unlocking that recovery are these vaccines. We've had some positive news here in the past few weeks about vaccine approvals in different countries, rollout beginning in different countries, yet so much is still unknown. How do vaccines factor into your forecast? I'm assuming that it just creates tremendous uncertainty.
Vaccines are critical as we think about health outcomes, as we think about growth outcomes, because vaccines are the kind of the single most important tool we have under our disposal to contain COVID-19. If things go well and we have widespread vaccine deployment in advanced economies, major emerging market developing economies, by the end of 2021, I think that these growth forecasts are going to be reasonably fair. But if there are some hiccups in terms of, you might have supply bottlenecks. And when you look around the world, it's not entirely clear large chunks of population are going to be willing to be immunized. So if those types of downside risks materialize, of course, that will affect how we are going to get rid of these distancing measures, containment measures, lockdowns. And then we might have weaker health outcomes and weaker growth outcomes. So the good news is that there are some few very highly effective vaccines. They are going to change the trajectory. Now it is up to policymakers to make sure that there is widespread deployment of vaccines to a large share of population around the world.
Talk to me a little bit about your upside projections and your downside projections. And for people who aren't aware, this is sort of one of the ways that you guys account for some of that uncertainty. You sort of say, this is our optimistic projection and this is our pessimistic projection. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're finding in this current report?
We have certain assumptions, and the most important assumption is, of course, the vaccine deployment. By the end of 2021, you have vaccines widely, basically available in advanced economies, major emerging market developing economies. In 2022, global community does even better in terms of distribution of vaccines. If there are some supply bottlenecks, if there is some hesitation to get immunized in large chunks of society, then we might end up with much weaker growth outcomes. In fact, global growth could go all the way down to 1.6%. We are in a period, we see very high debt levels around the world. If we see, financial crisis in some countries, we might end up with even weaker growth outcomes. There is an upside risk, and the upside risk is that these new vaccines coming to the kind of the marketplace much faster, distribution is much faster, immunization rates much higher by the end of 2021. And if that happens, of course, you might see global growth going all the way up to 5%. And that's our hope at the moment.
And beyond the vaccines, beyond COVID, another big, I would imagine, macroeconomic development that is part of your forecast is sovereign debt loads. Can you talk to us a little bit about how sovereign debt loads could affect the recovery over the next few months?
Well, that's an important issue. Obviously, we are dealing with a health crisis that already turned into an economic crisis. But in many parts of the world, debt levels are at record high. And we need to do everything possible to avoid this economic crisis turning into a financial crisis because of a debt crisis taking place in some countries. Now, in an environment when you have very low interest rates, you might say these countries can, of course, service their debt. Even if they service their debt, when the debt levels are very high, payments are very high. That basically limits their ability to allocate their revenues to infrastructure investment in health and education. So impede overall growth and ability to basically develop.
Zooming out from the debt issue specifically, across the board, what do policymakers and governments need to do, in your view, to spur a strong or stronger economic recovery after this pandemic?
In the near term, single most important priority is to contain the pandemic. Help those in vulnerable segments of the society. Aggressively deploy a vaccine. And then, of course, there are very large support measures in place on the fiscal policy side, on the monetary policy side. Governments need to be extremely careful while thinking about withdrawing these policies. We already talked about record levels of debt and the consequences of, increased interest rates. There will be a recovery. There will be some sort of normality, but obviously that recovery, that normality will be different than what we had prior to the pandemic. I think we need to expect the best outcome, but prepare for the worst possibilities as well. Policymakers need to do the right thing.
Well, Ayhan, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
A big thanks to Ayhan Kozeh for his time. If you want to go more in depth on anything we've covered here today, head on over to worldbank.org/GEP. And if you want to write us, it's expertanswers@worldbank.org. Until next time, goodbye.